Episode 128, Engagement Ceremony, 5. Changed Black Dragon Release Technique into Black Dragon's Ascent. Terms used in this chapter. Tunabu, colloquial term typically used to describe early teens who have delusions of grandeur, who so desperately want to stand out that they have convinced themselves they have hidden knowledge or secret powers. Explosion Witch or Explosion Angel. Either way, a few hours passed after a fearsome being was born. Jude's appearance was revealed under the full moon that illuminated the deep night alone. Cordelia. Over here. His call in a low voice was answered by a low voice too. On the roof of the luxury accommodation. Cordelia gestured while she was seated at the edge of the roof. She was wearing black clothes so that she could travel in secret. Her hair stands out so much though. Cordelia's bright red hair seemed to glow under the moonlight. Her long hair was tied together and arranged in the so-called ponytail, and a smile spread over Jude's face. "What are you doing? Are you not coming?" "Ah, yes. A ponytail is better than twin tails after all." Jude absent-mindedly thought before he quickly went to Cordelia and sat down next to her. Just like Cordelia, Jude was wearing a black and skin-tight garment. "Let's go right away, wear this on your back." "Okay." When Jude handed her the backpack, Cordelia quickly wore it on her back before she crawled on the roof and moved towards the back of Jude. "How long will it take? If our time is not wasted on negotiations, we'll definitely be able to come back before sunrise." "Good, you have no problems with your stamina then." "None, madam, your servant has extremely good stamina." *T. Cordelia giggled and smoothly moved like a mollusk again as she climbed and attached herself on Jude's back. "Let's hurry, it will be a big problem if we get caught." "No, it won't be a big problem. They would just get scolded a little more, since they had done it before already." Jude smirked and corrected Cordelia's position on his back. He took a deep breath before raising his head and looked at the distance. 24 gale steps. Black winds advent. And a golden whirlwind arose. Jude lightly and silently raced on the roofs as he became a gale. He crossed Lanjesthay at lightning speed. "Wow!" Cordelia was a bit amazed as the wind brushed past her cheeks. She tightly hugged Jude's neck and enjoyed their speedy movement. "Tug, tug, tug. Lightly's lighter." Jude jumped from roof to roof without any difficulties. He ran on the roof as if he was running on flat ground, and he jumped high at some point. "Black Dragon's Ascent." Jude shouted out loud, and Cordelia instantly got goosebumps. "That's embarrassing. Why are you not ashamed?" But it was real and not something made up. It was a real power and not something a Tunabu made up. Jude used the energy of the ninth heaven's 9 doors to increase the Black Dragon's strength. As its name implied, he soared high as if ascending, and jumped over the walls of Lanjesthay at once. "Kayao!" Cordelia delightedly screamed without realizing it, as she felt like she was on a ride, and Jude's smile deepened. And they reached the forest. Cordelia raised her voice as Jude continued running without hesitation. "By the way, Jude." "Yes, princess." Cordelia's cheeks turned red again at Jude's cry. She was familiar with that nickname now since he had called her that a lot, but she was still embarrassed about it sometimes. Anyway, what are you planning?" "What?" "Fairy Queen." They spoke in a series of words that were difficult to understand without knowing the context, but the two were Jude and Cordelia. They could read each other's thoughts by just looking at the eyes of the other, so they could understand each other even with those short words. "You mean, how are we going to get the full protection from the Fairy Queen?" "Yes. The full Fairy Queen." She was the toughest opponent out of the 3 Fairy Queens whom Jude and Cordelia had met. The Fairy Queen is not a dupe. The other Fairy Queens could be duped, but not for the full Fairy Queen. They had to pay a reasonable price if they wanted to receive her protection. She might have given them the moonlight when they first visited, but she didn't give them the full protection. "I have an idea, but what about you? Do you have any ideas?" Jude asked while he continued to run fast, and Cordelia replied as if she was waiting for him to ask her. If you don't give me your protection, something will explode. What, you mean the fairy queen herself? Are you crazy? I mean the valley or the fairy forest. Hey, you seriously sound like a terrorist right now, okay? Threats are a crime, a crime. Tusk, it's not. What do you mean it's not? I mean, in my experience so far, most of the problems have been solved once we blew it up. Isn't that right? No, you demon, I won't allow it even if you say it cutely. I never said it cutely. Cordelia childishly spoke, and Jude closed his eyes for a moment and doubted himself. This is serious. He felt that this side of her was cute too. In any case, Jude opened his eyes again as he began climbing the mountain to head to the valley where they could meet the fall fairies. Cordelia spoke again. What was your plan then? Cordelia, you have the backpack with you, right? Yes. Inside, there are 3 boxes of premium chocolates from Langersthey that I bought earlier. Wait, what? I mean, are you going to lure the fairy queen with chocolate? Yes, with luxury chocolate. Hey, is the fairy queen a kid? Will she listen to you just for chocolate? She would, right? Cordelia blinked her eyes at Jude's question, and she soon nodded and said, Come to think of it, you're right. He was correct on the queen being like a kid. Because even the queen was still a fairy. While my Jude is clever, let me praise you a lot. Cordelia said so and stroked his head, and Jude lifted up her position on his back as he said, Maury, please praise me a little more. What more should I do? Think about it. The rather sincere Cordelia really began to think about it, and Jude increased his speed even further. And they finally arrived in front of the valley. Cordelia grumbled as she soaked herself in the cold valley water and succeeded in calling out the fairies by singing Twinkle Little Star. Fairies are easier to deal with than I thought. They had thought at first that there was a set date and time, so they struggled a lot back then, but now, it felt like a vending machine that would make something come out if they just pressed the button. At any rate, Jude and Cordelia met the fairy queen, and after some negotiations, they succeeded in achieving their goal. No, they didn't just succeed. It was a great success. Wow. Cordelia stood alone under the full moon and turned her body around several times, and Jude was lost in admiration. Because she was so beautiful. Cordelia was like a goddess now. No, she was like a fairy. It wasn't because Jude had a love filter in his eyes. Cordelia was really like a half fairy now. Fairy dress. Instead of her black clothes, Cordelia was now wearing a white dress that looked to be fluttery and translucent. Made of a soft yet shiny cloth reminiscent of a fairy's wings, the main material for this dress was moonlight. A fantasy dress made by collecting the fantasy moonlight. Jude Wiki made its appearance after a long time, and smiles spread over the faces of Jude and Cordelia. They gave this one for that. They gave this for 2 boxes of chocolate, right? 1 box was enough for getting the full protection. After tasting chocolate for the first time, the fairy queen revealed her true nature as a fairy, and the 2 were able to close a successful deal under very favorable terms. As Cordelia turned around in place, the wide skirt beautifully spread out as if it was a blooming flower bud. It's pretty, hee. Smiling brightly like a fairy, Cordelia grabbed the hem of her skirt and randomly posed several times. Fairy dress, a rank. Jude and Cordelia knew that the fairy dress wasn't really meant for combat. Nevertheless, the reason why the fairy dress was an A-rank item was because it was really faithful to the natural role of a dress. It increases the charm stat by 1.5 times. It didn't increase the absolute value, but it was still a striking piece of equipment that made its wearer stand out. It also corrected the appearance values, so it gave the wearer a fairy-like mystique. When the ball is held, everyone will be enchanted. What will happen if Cordelia fully wears makeup and dons the fairy dress when she goes to the founding ball? What if she appeared in her awakened mode instead of her normal look now? She can turn into an angel after all. Just imagining it felt amazing. He couldn't stop the corners of his mouth from rising. They'll be really captivated. She would dominate the founding ball itself. No, of course it's not like a beauty pageant, so there is no need for her to dominate it. Still, what was good was good. And if she could really dominate the ball, it would be possible to take advantage of it. Hee, I'm a bit embarrassed, Cordelia bashfully said as she shyly laughed with a red face, and Jude was grateful that the girl in front of him was his fiancée. He then straightened his expression afterwards. Okay, anyway, let's go back. Yes, let's go back. Cordelia felt better and quickly changed her clothes. She rode on Jude's back again, and the two became like a gale as they returned to Langesthe. And 2 days later in the afternoon, you are master. Magyar. At the mansion of Count Bayer, located in the frontier city of Balon. Marja's nickname as the Ice Princess was brought to shame, as she expressed quite intense emotions, and Jude didn't lag behind too. As he hugged Marja, who had come running, he lifted her by the waist and even turned around. Yo, young master. Ha, I miss you, Marja. Jude got used to lifting people this way because of Cordelia. Marja was flustered with a red face, and she soon burst into laughter. It was because she was reunited with Jude after a long time, and also because she realized that Jude had become really healthy now. He got bigger. Jude was originally smaller than Marja herself, but not now. He grew tall enough that she had to look up, and his body that seemed to be delicate enough that he looked like a girl than a boy was now firm, and made him look strong. Young master, I have a lot of things I want to hear. I also have a lot of stories I want to tell you, Marja. Because Marja was like a real older sister to Jude. But there was an order to everything. Jude carefully put Marja down before he turned his head and saw Count Bayer facing Gar-El. Father, I heard the situation from Count Chase, but I want to hear more from you. Everything that had happened since they left Vedafalnia. Joy and curiosity coexisted in the eyes of Count Bayer, because his sons whom he were worried about brought so many gifts on their way home. He got stronger. Count Bayer was one of the strongest among the 10 great swordmasters. He could roughly guess Jude's condition just by looking at him. Unnatural. His growth couldn't be explained in the usual way. But Count Bayer also thought that it was natural. Did his talent that had been suppressed for so long exploded at once? Chen Mujic had once been suppressed by his Gumjalmeek. Add to that were the several lucky coincidences that he encountered. I can't wait to test him. How strong Jude was, at which level he was now, and how much stronger would he be in the future. And there was another joyful news for him. We have already began the preparations. Let's hold the engagement ceremony after 2 weeks. Yes, father. Gar-El replied a little awkward as if he was shy, and Count Bayer smiled. He was very happy. He actually felt sorry for Jude, but Gar-El's engagement touched his heart more than Jude's achievements. It was long. 10 years. Gar-El didn't even mention the word marriage after the incident of that day. A happy occasion, what an auspicious occasion. He didn't expect his second son's runaway to turn out like this. Count Bayer once again happily laughed, and as he looked around, he saw all the people in his mansion who were also delighted at the return of his 2 sons. Let's go in, tonight will be a long night. Yes, father. Gar-El replied, and Jude smiled as he followed the two. And 2 weeks later, Gar-El and Adelia's engagement ceremony was held. The Bayer family and the Chase family, 2 of the 12 northern families. The union of 2 families was something to be wary of and not celebrated, but unexpectedly, the reaction of the 12 northern families was positive. Because there were members who will be united anyway. To begin with, the 2 families had tried to unite through the marriage of Jude Bayer and Cordelia Chase. The marriage of Gar-El and Adelia would have made the relationship between the 2 families a little closer, but that was it in the end. No, I'd say it became better. Marriage was originally a union between 2 families. Even more so for high-ranking nobles, such as the 12 northern families. Count Bayer and Count Chase lost the opportunity to grow their power by marrying Gar-El and Adelia to other families. Well, Balon is a city where one can just fool around. It was just a frontier city anyway. That wasn't a very good reason, but in any case, the 12 northern families sincerely blessed Gar, Elle and Adelia's engagement for this reason. It's rare to have an engagement that everyone sent their well wishes like this. What do you mean? It's an engagement, so everyone would obviously wish them well. When Cordelia tilted her head and asked, Jude simply smiled instead of properly explaining it to her. Because he didn't want to dirty the pure Cordelia's mind with the hardships of life. Unnigh is pretty. At the garden of Count Bayer, many people were gathered in the banquet hall that was fully decorated by the two counts, and there was one person who stood out as if she was shining alone. Adelia Chase. She was, indeed, Cordelia's older sister. She was a beautiful woman even when she was not dressed up, and her beauty was to the point that she was like Helen of Troy. She was as beautiful as a goddess in her white dress, that gave her a very elegant look after her lovely blonde hair, that was nicely tied up by a lace had now been let down. And Gar el-Bayer was next to her. He was handsome as he was Jude's older brother, but his sense of stability stood out. Despite being in a place where the attention of many people gathered on him, he maintained his usual expression, so Cordelia felt that his calmness of mind made him a reliable adult. He's somehow cool. And she was somehow envious. As the light of longing filled Cordelia's sparkling blue eyes, Jude said in a small voice. Cordelia. What is it, Jude? Should we ask for it? What? An engagement ceremony. Cordelia blinked at Jude's words. I'm having an engagement ceremony. With whom? Jude and me. I mean, we never had an engagement ceremony since we were engaged while we were still in our mother's wombs. Cordelia recalled her memories for a moment before she nodded her head. Because it was as Jude had said. We were indifferent to each other before we remembered our past life memories. It was rare for her to talk and see her fiancé's face, so she didn't like him much. Because Jude was sick and stuck at home all the time. She was worried about her fiancé, but there was no particular feeling beyond that. Their relationship was literally nothing more than a fiancé and fiancée who their families had decided to engage. What do you think? Should I ask them to do it? When Jude asked again, Cordelia looked at Gar, Elle and Adelia again. They were standing in front of everyone as they faced each other, and one could see how much they loved each other, even from a distance. What if I replace it with Jude and me there? She imagined it for a moment. And Cordelia covered her face with her hands. Cordelia. Wait. And thought again. Jude was asking for an engagement ceremony. Jude was asking if they could do it too now that he had seen Gar, Elle and Adelia's engagement ceremony. Do you really like me? You're asking this because you like me, right? But she didn't feel comfortable with it. Because he was Jude. Because he was Outboxer 009, who irritatingly teased her every day in the chat window. Eyes look at his eyes. Because her unnigh did it. She would be able to tell by looking at his eyes. Cordelia took a deep breath before she lowered her hands that covered her face, and then gulped nervously. She turned her head and tried to face Jude. However, you or I can't look at him. Because she and Jude could communicate with just the look of their eyes. As she thought back now, he would be able to clearly read her thoughts at that moment. Hey, do you like me? Why are you looking at me and asking if I like you? What is this, axe disease? Something like that would happen. So it was impossible, she couldn't meet eyes with Jude right now. Then how do I check it? Should I find another way? Cordelia. Jude tilted his head and asked, but Cordelia was lost in her thoughts as she covered her face with both hands. The engagement ceremony continued while the two were like that. And time passed. Are they kissing? What? Cordelia raised her head after struggling from all kinds of delusions, and she was able to see Gar, Elle and Adelia kissing each other after they exchanged rings. Both of them looked to be very happy. We made this. Jude spoke in a small voice, and Cordelia nodded her head. Everyone who was gathered in the banquet hall gave the couple a warm applause. May they continue to be happy. May they be able to continue protecting their happiness. Cordelia erased her thoughts about Jude from her mind, and she held her hands together and prayed. She sincerely wished for it. And what they needed to do to achieve that. The fate and future of everyone that needed to be changed again. 1 month after the engagement ceremony. 1 month and 15 days before the 300th anniversary of the country's founding. Invitation letters from the royal capital arrived at the homes of Count Bayer and Count Chase. Late post Tilda, Genshin had an update yesterday, so I spent most of the day playing it and forgot about the translation, hahaha. As for the next chapter, there might be some delay in its release because I would have to help with the Christmas Eve food preparations, Noch Buna. Terms used in this chapter. Mildang, Korean slang for a love strategy where the BFGF try to control their love so that they do not look too much needy. It's sometimes translated in English as playing hard to get. Source, Art of Mildang. 3 weeks after Gar, Elle and Adelia's engagement ceremony. Cordelia was quietly sitting in front of the desk as she pouted her lips. And there was one woman who was watching her. Cordelia's escort, Dahlia, who was like an older sister to her, smiled and said in passing, Miss, are you sulking? No, I'm not. Cordelia automatically responded, and Dahlia smiled again. Don't say that, you're sulking, right? I'm not. Cordelia replied in annoyance and even snorted, but Dahlia became more certain because of that. She's really upset. You look sulky. Dahlia shifted her gaze a little further away and looked at the paper Cordelia was scribbling on. It was the paper that she used to write formulas in her magic studies, but small scribbles could be seen everywhere, and as Dahlia had thought, the scribbles was about someone specific. Stupid Jude, idiot. Upon seeing the clumsy scribbles, Dahlia quickly raised her hand to cover her mouth. Because she smiled like a mother. How can you be so cute? The reason why Cordelia was sulking. It was something simple and obvious. Because Mr. Bayer had stopped writing to her. Around 3 weeks had already passed since the last one. An unexpected letter arrived once with a gift 5 days after Adelia's engagement ceremony, which had happily surprised Count Chase and everyone, but no other letters had arrived since then. How cold-hearted. He hadn't been in touch with Cordelia for almost 15 days. I roughly heard the reason why, but after Cordelia lost contact with Jude, she was like a flower that withered away day by day. Of course, if she had heard Dahlia's thoughts, she would have excessively denied it, but Dahlia had already gone to Count Bayer's place once for Cordelia. According to the explanation of the knight, Jun, whom she became acquainted with during their journey to Lanjesthay, it was as follows. He has been practicing hard every day with Count Bayer from early in the morning to late at night. In short, Sir Jun said that Jude was busy practicing every day. Well, it can't be helped. Yes, the young master was so quick to learn, so the Count was also very passionate. Jude's extraordinary talent had already been proven by the various events that occurred. So she could also understand why a fire was lit in Count Bayer's eyes, and he began to actively train Jude. Young Master Gar-El and even the Count was convinced, young Master Jude will be the strongest knight in the north. Oh, the weight of the Count's words was different from the words of a parent who often bragged about their child. Count Bayer, one of the Northern Sagang and one of the 10 great swordmasters with the title Sword General. Jun saw the Count say that Jude would be the strongest, so it seemed to him that Jude had immense talent. In fact, Iron Man Landius coveted his talent. Iron Man Landius was one of the 5 heroes of the Paragon Kingdom, and the man who was always mentioned when people discussed about the strongest people in the world. Jude was a disciple of Landius, and there was only one reason why Landius made Jude his disciple. Chen Mujit, the incarnation of martial arts from the heavens. So please take care of Lady Cordelia. They're a really good couple, but if they ever have a falling out. Yes, I won't let that happen. I'll have a talk with the miss when that occurs. Thank you. Knight Jun sighed in relief, as if this was his business. One way or another, it seemed like he was devoted to his young master Jude. It's a good thing. Elle and Jude had a very close relationship, so Count Bayer did not have any problems with the two. Anyway, Dahlia stopped recalling her conversation with Jun and looked at Cordelia in front of her again. Cordelia was sitting in front of the desk and playing with her pen, and every small gesture of hers expressed her annoyance and dissatisfaction, just as Dahlia thought. If she really wanted to see him, she should contact him first. She could also visit the Bayer mansion once. But Cordelia didn't do that. She puffed her cheeks and pouted her lips every day, but she never tried to contact him first. It's Mildang. Yufufu, how cute. I want to see you, I want to meet you, but I have to endure and hold back my feelings. But her Mildang had a small drawback. While Cordelia had plenty of time to think about Jude, Jude could not afford to think about anything else because of his one-on-one training with Count Bayer. So I'll have to help the young miss for a little bit. Because Dahlia had an idea on how to tease Cordelia, who was sulking today. Miss, why? A letter has arrived. A letter? Cordelia jumped up from her seat, but she soon blushed a little and then cleared her throat. A letter isn't that important. She quickly sat down and turned around, but Dahlia could see it. The corners of Cordelia's mouth were slightly raised. HMPH, I knew you'd give up first. Are you thinking of something like that? Ahems, by the way, Dahlia. Yes, miss. I'm not really curious, but you know that, right? Yes, miss. But he wrote it first, right, so wouldn't it be polite for me to check it? Maybe. Ahem, you're right, so bring me the letter. Cordelia turned around very slowly and stretched out her hand as if she was not interested, but there was something she couldn't hide, and that was her eyes. You're anxious. After suppressing her laugh, Dahlia handed over a letter in a white envelope. Ahem. And then, Cordelia grabbed the letter as if snatching it, and opened the letter in a contradictory behavior, as she did it as slowly as possible yet was quite quick too, but Cordelia soon frowned. She can't help it. The letter wasn't Jude's. The letter that arrived was an invitation from Count Ficus. Birthday party. Yes, it's a party to celebrate Lady Emma Ficus' 17th birthday. No, I know that too. It was natural for Cordelia to frown. The Ficus family was one of the 12 northern families, but wasn't very close to the Chase family. It wasn't that bad that they would fight each other, but they didn't have a friendly relationship either. Moreover, Emma Ficus had long been a person who was arguing with Cordelia, and had a strange yet burning desire to compete with Cordelia in the past. She's hardly seen in the game. There was a related sub-quest involving her, but she only appeared once, so Yellow Storm didn't remember her. But it was different for Cordelia. Emma invited Cordelia on her birthday last year and bragged about her fiancé a lot. Oh, is Mr. Bayer absent again? I'm so sorry, I feel so sad thinking about it, but later you'll have no problems with the wedding, right? I'm worried that it's because of a problem with his health, ho. That voice, that look. That behavior made her very angry even before she recalled the memories of her past life, or even when she was much gentler back then, but she got even more angry when she looked back on the memories of her past life. Miss, it's time to show them what you've got. Huh. Mr. Bayer will be with you this time. When Dahlia spoke with sparkling eyes, Cordelia blinked because she didn't understand her immediately, but it was only for a moment. Cordelia's eyes were suddenly filled with a will to fight. We have to pay back the grievances she had caused, and this is an excuse. No, we have to discuss this with Mr. Bayer, who is coming too. That was why Dahlia didn't lose her smile when she handed Count Ficus' invitation that would surely upset Cordelia. It was a justification for Cordelia to visit Jude first. A way where Cordelia wouldn't look like she lost against Jude, and a way where she could say that it was unavoidable. Jude. Yes, there is something you need to discuss with Mr. Bayer. It's also urgent. They didn't have much time since Emma Ficus' birthday was 5 days from now, and it would take a full day of travel in the carriage to get to the Ficus territory. In addition, Cordelia had one more reason. Come to think of it, it's about time for that event to happen. The time when the royal capital sent invitations to everyone for the 300th anniversary's founding ball. Emma Ficus' birthday was a trivial event that one could just ignore, but the founding event was different. It was their third task for a perfect happy ending. Yes, this is really important, so I have to discuss it with Jude. As Cordelia spoke to herself, Dahlia immediately followed. Yes, miss, it is as you had said, so let's go to Count Bayer's mansion, in order to meet Mr. Bayer. HMPH, that's right, I'll meet with Jude. Okay, then let's begin now. Now? Yes, now, before it's too late. In fact, Dahlia had already sent a letter to Count Bayer, saying that they would come to visit today. Wait a second. Yes, so you have to dress up and be pretty. We still have enough time. It's not like that. There's no need for me to look pretty for Jude. Really? That ahem, but I should do the basics, for decorum. Cordelia murmured as if coming up with an excuse before she quietly moved in front of the mirror, and Dahlia smiled again. And 3 hours later. Let's call it a day. We're done. Inside the drill hall. Jude tilted his head and asked after hearing Gar-L's words, as he sat on the floor and wiped his sweat. Because it was too early than the usual time. Yes, we're done, there's something scheduled for today. Did you get a letter from sister-in-law Adelia? Jude asked him teasingly, but Gar-L shook his head, as if it was absurd, and then said, If it's letters, it comes every day. I also write back every day. I see. Gar-L was his usual self, but Jude was very surprised with Adelia. It feels like her real nature itself has changed. Adelia was like a hedgehog in the original, so he never thought that she would be a lady so deeply in love now. It would be worth seeing her at the founding ball. Unlike Jude and Cordelia, who were just hanging out at home, Adelia was a royal wizard for the Royal Guard Magic Corps in the royal capital. She took a long vacation to catch Jude and Cordelia, but she still served as the commander, so she had no choice but to return to the royal capital. It was another reason why the engagement ceremony was hurried. But Adelia was due to retire sooner or later, since the engagement ceremony alone wasn't enough. She was supposed to quit her job as a commander and return to her hometown after the founding event. Because my brother Gar-L has to inherit the title of Count Bayer. They came to this conclusion because it was impossible for Gar-L to go to the royal capital, even if Adelia could go to Baelon. She must have really loved him. She easily gave up her position as a commander of the Royal Guard Magic Corps. Anyway, it would be sooner or later. There was a month and 20 days left before the 300th anniversary founding ball. If he followed the flow of the original, an invitation to the royal capital would probably arrive within a week. Well, it seems like the time has come. Go quickly and wash off your sweat first. It's been a long time, so shouldn't you look the best? What in the world are you talking? That was it. Jude quickly turned to the piercing gaze he felt behind him, and he finally saw her after a long time. Cordelia. There was a red-haired girl standing and looking down on the balcony, overlooking the drill hall at a distance. I hear that she has something to urgently discuss. It seems like she got an invitation for a birthday party at Count Ficus' territory. Jude nodded when he heard Gar-L's explanation. In the original, there was no event like an invitation to a birthday party because Cordelia was not in Baelon at that point, but the event was bound to naturally happen now that the situation had changed. So instead of raising questions about Count Ficus, Jude just stared at Cordelia and asked Gar-L in a low voice. But brother. Yes, my younger brother. She somehow looks upset, right? Maybe. Gar-L and Jude looked at the girl on the balcony together, and the girl, Cordelia, changed her expression, and Jude thought he could hear her snorting at him. Go quickly. Yes, brother. Jude smiled as he stood up right away and hurriedly moved. Are you upset? No, I'm not. I'm not upset at all, okay? But you look like you're upset. No, it's not. I'm totally not upset at all, okay? Jude and Cordelia were seated across the table and quickly exchanged glances, and Marja and Dahlia warmly smiled at the affectionate air between the two. They really look good together, right? Yeah. The two had a similar conversation with their eyes before they quickly got up and left their seats. It was to allow Jude and Cordelia to spend their time alone together. "Aren't you upset?" "No, I'm not. There's no way I'm upset just because you haven't contacted me for 16 days. "Oh, 16 days." She was counting the days. "I'm touched." Jude smiled in satisfaction, and Cordelia snorted without realizing the mistake that she had just made. "Anyway, I'm sorry, I was too preoccupied with training." "HMPH, it's okay, I do not mind it." "I am glad then." When Jude smoothly said that, Cordelia frowned for a moment, but she couldn't take her words back now. "So is your training going well?" Jude immediately nodded his head at her slightly sulking voice that she was unconscious of. "Yes, I'm training on how to further utilize the power of the ninth heaven's 9 doors. Specifically, I'm learning how to fight while using it together with the Bayer's swordsmanship." "I see." She didn't really understand what he meant, but it seemed to her that he was working hard. "I guess he really can't help it. Should I forgive him?" "No, he didn't do something for me to forgive in the first place." Cordelia herself had never been that upset. "Anyway, Cordelia, what about you?" "Me? Yes, you wouldn't be just doing nothing, right?" "Of course I didn't, I practiced really hard." Cordelia loudly snorted again, before she pulled out a detonating cord from her waist. She looked like she wanted to show off her training achievements. But a detonating cord out of all things. No, it was definitely a tool that required training in order to be properly used, and it was something that Jude himself gave her. "Why are you impressed?" Cordelia asked in a quiet voice, and Jude immediately nodded. If he pretended to be tactless at this point, she would really be upset. "Yes, I'm impressed. I'm very much impressed." "HMPH, well, if you say so. I guess I'll have to give you a demonstration." The corners of Cordelia's mouth was raised, and she promptly picked up the detonating cord. However, she definitely couldn't use the detonating cord inside the drawing room. Therefore, Jude said as he slightly dissuaded Cordelia, "Let's put that off for a moment because we have to go to the training area to see it. Before that, there's something that I want to show you." "Something to show to me?" "Yes, you came here today in the first place because of the invitation from Count Ficus, right? There's also the invitation for the founding ball that will arrive soon." "Yes, that's right." She had forgotten it for a while, but her primary purpose for visiting was to discuss on how they would respond to the invitation of Count Ficus. "We'll have to crush her." She was a girl who was not satisfied in arguing with Cordelia every year, but even leveled insults at her. Jude had no intention of letting her get away with it. "Hey Jude, we're going to a birthday party, right? We're not going on a fight, okay?" "Yes, you're right, it's not a fight. We're just going to crush her one-sidedly." Cordelia frowned at Jude's words, but she decided to let it go since she somehow felt much better and relieved. "The timing is perfect. We can use it for practice before using it in the royal capital. Let's consider it as a demonstration." Cordelia tilted her head when Jude spoke again. She couldn't understand what he was talking about. Come to think of it. Was it in Langersthey? Jude had said that he was preparing a secret weapon to increase their influence in the royal capital. That's right, that's what he is talking about now. Jude had immediately said that without checking if Cordelia had understood him, so Cordelia decided to ask instead of thinking more about it. "So what is it?" "It's these." Jude smiled a little more evil than usual as he put the things he had prepared over the past 3 weeks on the table. "The chapter is finally here, and yes, I spent a lot of time in Dragonspine again, but I got so distracted by everything that I hadn't even reached 50%, hahaha. Anyway, next chapter is on Monday, so enjoy Jude playing Princess Maker for now." Terms used in this chapter. Become a squid, Korean slang for someone who looks ugly or inferior in appearance when compared to a more handsome or beautiful person. So if a person with an average-looking face sits next to a person with a very beautiful face, the average-looking person looks like a squid. And just a note regarding Cordelia's hair color, it is color pink, just like in the cover art of this series. However, the author likes to use the Korean word for red to also describe Cordelia's hair. If we go by color theory, pink is just a tint of red, so the author isn't exactly wrong. Emma Ficus. She was the second daughter of Count Ficus, and never really liked Cordelia because of a very simple and plain reason. It's annoying. Cordelia's very existence was annoying. A pretty girl who looked like a doll and was even nice. She didn't like the fact that Cordelia was truly nice and not pretending to be nice. I'm excited on trampling her this year. She liked using Cordelia's fiancé as a way to bully her because Cordelia was completely embarrassed about it, but the situation was slightly different this year. Because you seriously dug your own grave. Were you so excited that your fiancé, who couldn't even go out much, had become a bit healthy? Cordelia had prepared a lot of things to be embarrassed about in the last 2 months. I can't wait. Emma Ficus trembled and sat in front of the dressing table as she looked at the mirror. She saw a petite and charming girl with long pink hair. In fact, the main reason why Emma Ficus disliked Cordelia was because of the color of their hair. They had the same red hair, so they were always compared everywhere. Good, I'll seriously trample you this year. With a wicked smile that didn't match her lovely appearance, Emma Ficus remembered what she had prepared. Her father had prepared her new dresses and accessories, and she had a fiancé who was good-looking enough to be envious of. I really can't wait. I hope my birthday comes soon. With an evil smile again, Emma Ficus looked at the mirror again. Without knowing the fact that there was a man far away in Balon who was looking forward to her birthday more than she herself. 5 days later at Count Ficus' mansion. Sylvia Crossbell, the eldest daughter of Count Crossbell who belonged to the 12 northern families, unknowingly frowned. She still has a flashy taste. At Count Ficus' garden that was not just spacious, but also vast, the banquet hall was excessively and flashily decorated. Fresh flowers filled the banquet hall even though it was still winter, and a temperature control magic device made it possible to hold the event outdoors. An ordinary noble would have been worried enough of their finances with just those two, but the quality of the various items used to decorate the banquet hall was also high. One way or another, she's a Ficus. It was a fact that Emma Ficus was strangely obsessed with Cordelia, but there was nothing bad with the relationship between the Chase and Ficus families. Their field of activity was vastly different, even if they both belonged to the 12 northern families. Count Chase owned a magic tower, but did not have a proper manor, so he maintained his influence with the power of his talent. On the other hand, Count Ficus possessed not only the best granary in the north, but also the best transit trading city, due to the fact that the Silicones River Delta, which was called the lifeline of the north, was in his fief. In short, he maintained his influence with the power of his outstanding territory. Therefore, Count Ficus' real rival was Count Crossbell, and not Count Chase. North is Crossbell, south is Ficus. Count Crossbell made colossal amounts of money through their financial business, while Count Ficus made huge profits through agriculture and commerce. It was when Count Ficus began to enter the financial industry that the relationship between the two families, with the most wealth out of the 12 northern families, began to fall apart. Naturally, when compared to Count Crossbell, who already dominated the financial world in the north, Count Ficus' financial business was like child's play, but the Crossbells found it unacceptable. It's an annoying fact, but Count Ficus has the potential. It was currently at the level of a child's play, but it was unknown when and how it would grow. Count Ficus was no less than Count Crossbell when it simply came to their financial strength. I normally wouldn't want to come here. From Sylvia's perspective, Count Ficus' place was no different to enemy territory. The Crossbell and Ficus families had, in fact, avoided ever meeting the other. The Ficus family did not participate in the social gathering of the 12 northern families' children. But for some reason, Count Ficus always sent invitations to Emma Ficus' birthday party. Despite the fact that the distance between the two families' territories was so far that it took several days to travel from one point to another. Well, I can guess what their intentions are. Did we touch a nerve? We're just doing this much for you. We sent you an invitation out of courtesy, but it's up to you if you want to come or not. Since Count Crossbell, who was famous for his fiery personality, could not let go of Count Ficus' provocations, Sylvia had to fully dress up and attend Emma Ficus' birthday party every year. Although there is one more reason why I'm here. It was none other than Cordelia. Emma Ficus had been strangely mean to Cordelia for a long time, and Cordelia was unable to properly defend herself because she had few lady friends due to the fact that she rarely went outside her home. Her situation was perfect, so Emma lashed at her as much as she could. This year will be more intense than last year. Sylvia couldn't properly help Cordelia because Emma Ficus always attacked her with facts, but she was planning to protect Cordelia this year, even if it was beyond her abilities. She had to return the favor at Langesthay. And it will be a little different this year. Emma Ficus primarily used Cordelia's fiancé to attack Cordelia. Sylvia recalled what happened in Langesthay in the past and revealed an uncharacteristically evil smile. Because she was looking forward to it. Oh my goodness, Lady Sylvia, you're so beautiful this year. Isn't Lady Mia very lovely too? I've thought about this before, but you really have a good fashion sense. The color of the dress you chose is a perfect fit for you again. Really? Yes. Mia Ballon, the second daughter of Viscount Ballon, reddened her cheeks at Sylvia's compliment, but there was no other girl who approached Sylvia except for her. Because it's Count Ficus' party. It was basically a place where they were conscious of Count Ficus. All the invited families were also located near Count Ficus' territory, so it was natural for them to not approach Sylvia, the young lady of the Crossbell family. Mia is peculiar. But judging from the other young lady's troubled expressions while looking at her side, it seemed like Mia wouldn't approach her next year. Wow, it's Lady Emma. As Mia spoke with sparkling eyes, Sylvia gently moved away from her. There was a high possibility that the lost child would be in trouble if Emma Ficus found out that she was close to Sylvia. Anyway, the main character has arrived. Emma Ficus and her fiancé, Darren Philov, proudly entered the banquet hall. It was annoying to admit it, but Count Ficus was a formidable opponent after all. He isn't just some nouveau rich. Although he had an inclination to be a nouveau rich, he knew how to properly spend his money because of his heritage. Emma Ficus was wearing a light pink dress, and the design of her dress and her jewelry were all unusual. Fairy. A lovely design that hid the shortcomings of the small and petite Emma Ficus and highlighted her strong points. Emma Ficus was like a fairy, and Darren Philov, who was dressed in white formal clothes decorated with gold thread, was like a prince in a story. She really stuck to a concept, huh? But it did look quite good on her. All the young ladies in the banquet hall were seriously in awe. Oh my, is Lady Cordelia still not here? Emma Ficus lightly greeted the young ladies in the banquet hall and said while slightly fussing as if she had remembered Cordelia, and the young girls around her immediately responded to her words. I guess she's late. She seemed to be in a lot of trouble lately. Could she have been banned from going out? Maybe she's late because of her fiancé. Well, he must not be feeling well. He seems to have gotten a little better, but lately he must have overdone it, don't you think? Emma faintly smiled and said, and the ladies promptly agreed. Ha, seriously. It was such an annoying sight, but Sylvia decided to put up with it, because it was meaningless for her to step in when the person being talked about was not here. Why is she late anyway? Cordelia was never late for this kind of event. Why is she late today? Did something happen? Did something happen to Jude like they said? She was half right and half wrong. Their reason for being late was because of Jude, but it wasn't because of a problem. There was a reason why Jude deliberately made them arrive late. There was a reason why he let all the young ladies gather first, and why he also waited for Emma Ficus, the main character for today, to show up. Lady Cordelia from Count Chase has arrived. Everyone's eyes were gathered into one place after hearing the butler's words. It was natural to do that. All of the ladies had arrived except for Cordelia. I guess she has only arrived now. Is it because of her fiancé? Some young ladies openly gossiped to please Emma Ficus, but it was only for a moment. They couldn't talk any more about Cordelia. Because they were captivated. because they lost their senses and were left gaping one after another. Wow, Mia Ballon blankly let out a voice. Not only her, but also all the young ladies who gathered in the banquet hall had dazed looks. Cordelia Chase. Her beauty had long been famous. Everyone knew that she was such a beautiful girl that even those from the same sex would blankly stare at her. But this time it wasn't that. Simply saying that she was beautiful wouldn't describe the sight in front of them. Cordelia. Even Sylvia was captivated. All that she could do was let out an astonished voice and blink her eyes. A goddess. An existence that was beyond human. Dressed in a light pinkish-white dress, Cordelia entered the banquet hall with an elegant smile. Her reddish-pink hair seemed to shine, and the accessories everywhere sparkled, but wasn't excessive as they even further made Cordelia's beauty shine. A truly overwhelming beauty. What? Sylvia was the first to come to her senses, and she blinked her eyes several times. She had always been a pretty girl, but was it this much? And when Sylvia came to her senses, she noticed something else. They're the same. The design of the dress Cordelia was wearing. It wasn't really the same, but the design concept was the same as Emma Ficus' dress. The color is similar too. Similar clothes. So even if she hated to compare it, she had no choice but to compare the two. The other young ladies came to their senses one by one and noticed it too. They unconsciously looked at Emma Ficus and at Cordelia again. No one opened their mouths, but everyone knew. The difference between the two could only be described as overwhelming. Emma Ficus was a lovely girl too, but it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the current Cordelia was like a goddess. She was taller and had a better shape. They wouldn't have known if her clothes were different, but Emma Ficus, the lovely girl who wore the same clothes, was quickly crushed and became a squid. It's not just the clothes. Sylvia's sharp and discerning eyes began to take note of other things. The accessories worn by Cordelia. All of it were unusual. What was even more shocking was the fact that the location and number of accessories were the same as those of Emma Ficus. All of it are superior. Used gold, sorry, but ours is platinum. Diamond, I beg your pardon, but ours is bigger and more beautiful. That's the impression I get. It seems like you've made a decision. To crush Emma Ficus. To completely erase Emma Ficus' presence in this banquet hall. And the person who came up with this plot also thought the same. All according to plan. Jude wickedly smiled as he observed the banquet hall that was completely overwhelmed by Cordelia, who looked at Jude with confusion. Jude, what is this? What's going on? Yes, it's just as planned. Jude had already figured out what clothes Emma Ficus would wear and what accessories she would use. She was a character that appeared in a subquest once, so Jude Wiki contained information about her. I snooped around a bit too. Count Ficus spent a lot of money for today. So it was inevitable that there would be rumors in the business circles on what kind of dress and accessories she would wear. Perfection was achieved by adding the information he got from snooping around to his existing knowledge. Jude had met the Fall Fairy Queen again to specifically prepare for the dress to be used today. The dress and Magellan's accessories were profusely blessed by the fairies. And he added another weapon to her. Look at that shiny and smooth hair. Cordelia's hair was much more beautiful than usual. The reason was simple, because she used shampoo and conditioner. There's no shampoo and conditioner here. There were basic cleaning products like soap, because it was a world where civilization was quite developed, but there was no shampoo and conditioner. Ever since Jude had taken the sun's necklace from Lysagang, he was doing some research on it and eventually succeeded in developing a shampoo and conditioner that was suitable for commercial use. There is no woman who is not interested in beauty. I mean, if you were at least an upper-class woman, you would have no choice but to make yourself beautiful, even if you were not interested in it. The reason why Jude developed the shampoo and conditioner was simple. He intended it to be used as a bargaining material when they meet the royal family or the high-ranking nobles in the royal capital. It's working. Sylvia and the other ladies good at discerning had noticed the peculiarity of Cordelia's hair. What would happen if we approached them and offered them the shampoo and conditioner, saying that they can be like her if they used it? And what would happen if we gave it to Cordelia's friends in particular, and not to anyone else? She'll dominate the banquet. It might have begun as Emma Ficus' birthday party, but he made it into the new Cordelia's fantastic debut stage in the end. And it was just the beginning. Jude still had a lot of things he had prepared. First was Jude himself. I am Jude Bayer. I greet all the young ladies whom I'm meeting for the first time today. When Jude stepped forward and courteously greeted them, small groans and screams spread among the young ladies. Jude Bayer, a man who occupied a place among the best-looking characters in Legend of Heroes 2. It was natural that screams spread among the women, since Jude had went all out in dressing up. And I match him too. He matched the clothes and accessories of Emma Ficus' fiancé, even their hairstyles. Jude's plan worked again this time, and Darren Filov met the same fate as Emma Ficus as he was crushed and became a squid too. It'll be difficult if you croak with just this. Not yet, I prepared a lot of things, so don't be crushed like this yet. Perhaps Jude's wish was heard, because Emma Ficus came forward with spiteful words. She welcomed Cordelia while maintaining a calm expression. Oh my, you're a good-looking person, as I've heard. No wonder Lady Cordelia left such a letter. Such a letter. Cordelia's nighttime escape that she did several times. Cordelia's face turned red at that moment, and murmurs were heard among the young ladies. Emma Ficus' face regained a bit of its color. But Jude's wicked smile had yet to disappear. Because he naturally expected this to happen. It's about time they arrive. Those whom he invited for today. Jude mentally counted down, and the sound of footsteps were heard at just the expected time. The Guardians of the Holy Cross has arrived. As soon as the bewildered butler's voice ended, the elite members of the Guardians of the Holy Cross who were dressed in pure white entered the banquet hall. The Guardians of the Holy Cross. My goodness, did they come here to congratulate Emma on her birthday? The Guardians of the Holy Cross protected the continent from the demons. They never had a low prestige. In a sense, they were a group that held authority beyond that of the royal family. Everyone's attention were once again focused on the appearance of the Guardians of the Holy Cross, who were dressed not in just their combat uniforms, but in their best ceremonial clothes. Their gazes were directed at a paladin of the Guardians of the Holy Cross, the good Sir Eindolf, who was the manifestation of dignity. As he went to his destination with an unwavering attitude. Oh my, did they really come to celebrate Emma's birthday? The Guardians of the Holy Cross. Low voices were heard among the young ladies, and feelings of embarrassment and expectation spread on Emma Ficus' face. And Sir Eindolf knelt down to show his respect. In front of Cordelia and not Emma Ficus. The Guardians of the Holy Cross greet our benefactor. We greet our benefactor. The Guardians behind Sir Eindolf courteously greeted at the same time, and a scene like those in religious paintings was created. Cordelia turned to Jude in embarrassment, and Jude said with a smirk, Sir Eindolf, we just did the right thing. Please stand up. Cordelia would prefer that too. Eindolf slowly stood up at Jude's words. At the same time, surprise, wonder and an unbearable curiosity spread among the faces of the young ladies. Why are the Guardians of the Holy Cross courteously greeting Jude and Cordelia? But there was more to be surprised. Jude signaled to Cordelia, who hesitantly proceeded with the plan she agreed to. She transformed into an angel without bringing out her wings. The atmosphere of Cordelia changed at that moment. She was like a goddess even if she wasn't, but the air around her began to really feel sacred now. And the most sensitive to her change was the Guardians of the Holy Cross. Sir Eindolf unconsciously blinked his eyes in awe. Ay, angel. The staging was a bit crude, but the effect was magical. Cordelia was a woman given the title of an angel, because a paladin from the Guardians of the Holy Cross mistook her for one. And no, I'm not an angel. Cordelia stuttered with a completely red face, and Jude's smile deepened. The reason why he called the Guardians of the Holy Cross here. The reason why he promised to cooperate in the future, and then requested that the Guardians of the Holy Cross be sent here today. It was to clear the various rumors that had spread regarding Jude and Cordelia. From teenage escapees who were head over heels with each other and repeatedly ran away, to newly packaged heroes who fought the demonic followers in the north and made a big enough contribution that the Guardians of the Holy Cross paid their respects to them. Perfect. Sir Eindolf saw Jude's eyes signal and began to speak in front of everyone about the activities of Jude and Cordelia in the north. A lot of the events in the Wild Lands were naturally omitted, and his story had many dramatized parts here and there, but it was enough to reverse public opinion. Good. Jude made a deep smile and turned to Emma Ficus. He very much liked seeing her stunned face as her eyes blinked. I don't even have to do anything anymore. He could just leave the rest to them. And it really went as Jude thought. When the Guardians of the Holy Cross led by Sir Eindolf left, Sylvia spoke to Cordelia, and Jude advertised the shampoo and conditioner to Sylvia. You should try it too. The moment Cordelia handed over the small jar to Sylvia, a change occurred once again. The young ladies who were only watching from the side had begun approaching her. From Emma Ficus to Cordelia Chase. The main character of the banquet completely changed, and that changed atmosphere remained until the end of the banquet. And late in the afternoon, Jude stared at the banquet hall and party that ended much earlier than expected, before he turned to Cordelia and asked, "Were you satisfied?" Cordelia's eyes narrowed at his sly question, and she kicked Jude's shin afterwards. Ouch, why? What do you mean by why? Do you know how embarrassing it was? Especially when Eindolf was surprised and said angel, while in awe. Cordelia's face turned red again, and cutely struck Jude on the chest with her fist. The shameful part is always mine. At least tell me in advance. Haha, but didn't it go well? That's why it's more annoying, okay? At Cordelia's words, Jude snickered and quickly moved his feet. He moved to Cordelia's side in an instant and hugged her slender waist. So you don't like it? No, I love it. She actually felt sorry for Emma. Nevertheless, all of her frustrations that had accumulated so far had been relieved at once. As expected of my Jude, right? Yes, it's my Jude. Cordelia cheerfully laughed and soon tied her hair as she said. But Jude. Yes. Do you still have any shampoo and conditioner prototypes left, besides the one we'll bring to the royalty? There is. Then let's give some to Emma too. Let's carefully give it in a way that doesn't offend her. No matter how much she thought about it, they seemed to have gone too far. Today was her birthday after all. Jude smiled again at Cordelia's words and nodded his head. If that's what you want. And he thought that her blood wasn't the only one that was angelic. Satisfied by Cordelia's consideration, Jude stretched out his hand to escort her, and Cordelia gently held Jude's hand. And a week or so passed by, when rumors about the shampoo and conditioner circulated among the young ladies in the north. Invitations announcing the beginning of the founding commemoration at the royal capital finally arrived at Count Bayer and Count Chase's mansions. After the birthday party that could only be described as Cordelia coming out as the superior one. It was unsurprising that there was an uproar in Count Ficus' mansion. So annoying, I'm so annoyed. Unlike her petite and lovely appearance, Emma Ficus didn't have a gentle and sweet personality. When compared to a puppy, she was like a chihuahua that couldn't get over her anger and was running amok. Not only did she break, tear, and destroy things in her room, but she also slapped the maids and kicked a fuss to the point that the concerned Count Ficus asked what happened in her birthday party. Explain it in detail. Count Ficus, who had his youngest daughter at the age of 40, had a large and fierce appearance. In response to his question that he asked in an irritated voice, the butler described what happened at the party while profusely sweating. Cordelia completely dominated it. As a result, Emma Ficus, who should have been the main character of the party, had become a squid. After hearing the explanation, Count Ficus burst into laughter and then broke the ornaments in the desk before he knocked over the bookshelf in his office as he roared in anger. "How dare you do that in my house?" Who was the source of Emma Ficus' terrible personality? It was Count Ficus' genes and education. Count Ficus flew into a rage, and the servants, including the butler, spent their days under tremendous stress and suffering. And upon hearing all of these, Jude said with a very brilliant smile, "What else could they do then? What else could they do other than going crazy and destroying stuff in their house?" At Jude's confident attitude, Cordelia frowned and asked a bit timidly, "Won't he do something really bad to us?" Because Count Ficus was very powerful. When it simply came to their wealth, the gap was so wide that even if Count Bayer and Count Chase combined theirs, they wouldn't have half of Count Ficus' wealth. So if Count Ficus wanted to do something bad to Count Chase or Count Bayer... Just imagining it was horrible as Cordelia was almost in tears, but Jude shook his head. He lightly pinched Cordelia's cheeks and said, "That's not going to happen. Offend only those you can offend, so he can't do anything, okay?" "Really? Really, let me explain why." Jude sat next to Cordelia, who was quietly crouching on the sofa, and he began to explain it step by step. First, he has no justification. Justification, even though we ruined the party. Yes, because of how we ruined it. Think about it. Where would he go to complain? Cordelia was as beautiful as a goddess that my daughter became a shrimp. Isn't this unfair? Something like that. He was right. After all, the fundamental reason why the party was ruined was because Cordelia was much prettier when compared to Emma. Should he go to your father and say this? "Your daughter is so beautiful. How can she be as beautiful as a goddess? Because of your daughter's heavenly beauty, my daughter's mortal beauty is suffering. Explain to me why she is so beautiful. Explain it." As Jude spoke with clenched fists, Cordelia's face turned red in an instant. She understood that he was only explaining it, but she still became very embarrassed. Or should he go to my dad and complain? "Why is your daughter-in-law so beautiful? Why is she so beautiful that it broke my daughter's heart?" Stop. Or should he say it to other nobles? Cordelia Chase's beauty was like that of a heavenly goddess. How could there such an atrocity? How could someone be born with such a beauty and break my daughter's spirits? Stop. Or should he say it to the residents of his fief? Cordelia's beauty was so great that it reached the skies. "You crazy B*****, stop it, silence." Cordelia's face turned so red as if it would explode, and she used silence, magic, but Jude quickly tore a scroll to dispel her magic. "Dispel? Hey. Whoa, calm down." The effect was immediately visible when Jude stroked Cordelia's chin, as if he was calming down a puppy. Cordelia's eyes narrowed, and she began to growl. "Anyway, he has no justification. Cordelia, you understand now why there's no justification, right?" Cordelia nodded with a red face at Jude's question. Because it was definitely a reason that was hard to disagree with. But in reality, there was one more reason that Jude didn't tell her. It wasn't just because of Cordelia's beauty that turned Emma Ficus into a squid. Superior items. All of the clothes and accessories worn by Jude and Cordelia overwhelmed Emma Ficus and her fiancé in all aspects. What would people think about that? They would think about the fact that Count Bayer and Count Chase having much better accessories would mean that Count Ficus was no better than the two counts. It was an issue that was hard to contest, even if Count Ficus protested. And Count Bayer and Count Chase are not easy opponents. If it's just about military force, they're one of the top families among the 12 northern families. Will he pick a fight with two of such families? It will be too much for Count Ficus even if he's wealthy. The royal family would definitely not allow an armed conflict between the families of the 12 northern families, so there would be no direct armed conflict, but the families could still wield their swords if need be. And Count Ficus could never thoughtlessly confront the Bayer and Chase families, who were called the swords of the 12 northern families. He could quietly put some pressure commercially, but as you know, our Balon is not a frontier city for no reason. After all, Langesthe is where the influential merchants mainly do business. Count Ficus might be a master in trading, but that did not mean he controlled the entire north. In short, even if Count Ficus got mad, He wouldn't be able to crush our family's finances, or to be exact, he can't do any harm to the people of our families. So don't worry, okay? Okay. When Cordelia replied with a smile as if she was a bit relieved, Jude also smiled in satisfaction. Any more questions? There is, the shampoo and conditioner. Yes, what about that? How did you make it? I mean, how come you know how to make it? I've been trying to figure out his previous job. What is it? What kind of human knows how to make a detonating cord, as well as shampoo and conditioner? Cordelia directly asked as her eyes narrowed, and Jude shrugged as he replied. My friend taught me. Is your friend a chemical plant employee? No, it was a person in the same line of profession as I had, but it was that person's hobby. Jude thought of his old friend's face for a moment as if he missed that person, and then he continued to speak again. That person taught me so that if I went to some place that didn't have shampoo and conditioner, I wouldn't have a hard time, so it remained in my memory palace. Cordelia frowned when he said it like it was nothing. Because it was strange no matter how she thought about it. Why would you go to some place that didn't have shampoo and conditioner? Where is such a place anyway? Did your friend expect you to be reincarnated in the game world? No, that's not possible. It's just in case I went to some remote place. Jude and Cordelia thought of a completely different place when he said, remote place. They might have been able to talk with their eyes, but the topic came to a halt because the two had a different image in their minds. What about the detonating cord then? It's just part of my job. What was your job? Are you really a spy? Are you 7? She had previously thought that it was nonsense, but the more that she thought about it, the more she thought that it might be real. First of all, Jude wasn't just weird, but was too weird. Even if she separated his ridiculous memory palace on which his Jude wiki was based on, he was not an ordinary person. No ordinary person would habitually install traps near their sleeping places. They must have a mental illness if they did. On top of that, Jude knew how to make explosives like a detonating cord, and he was also good at plotting and scheming. He's good at collecting information. How else would he know what kind of clothes and accessories Emma Ficus and her fiancé would be wearing? If I put it all together. Spy 7, legendary mercenary. All of those were things that likely appeared in comics, but Cordelia's eyes began to be filled with excitement and conviction at the same time. There is a possibility. I know what you're imagining, but I won't tell you, okay? Why not? What about you then? What was your job, give and take, right? Cordelia was at a loss from Jude's words, and her gaze turned to another place. What should I do? Should I just tell him that I was a student? But then, I might have to use honorifics to Jude. The real reason wasn't actually because of honorifics. She was somehow feeling anxious. The current relationship they had might change if they fully disclosed their past lives to each other. Shall we speak at the same time at the count of 3? I won't do it. You won't. Yes, I won't. Cordelia kept her mouth shut, and Jude blinked his eyes but soon smiled. Okay, let's not do it. Yeah. Cordelia was still quiet as she pouted her lips, but she soon came up with a different topic. By the way, Jude. Yes, Cordelia. Why did you not agree to making the shampoo and conditioner as a commercial product? The next morning after the shampoo and conditioner were presented at the party, Sylvia Crossbell appeared with fluttering hair and suggested commercializing the shampoo and conditioner. This will sell, this will definitely sell. Sylvia, who was the embodiment of elegance, had shouted that with excitement, but Jude declined her offer without even thinking much about it. Why did he do that? Even Cordelia herself thought that it would sell well once it was made. Because we have to use it in the royal capital. What's the connection between using it in the royal capital and not selling it in the north? There's a big connection. Having said so far, Jude stood up and continued to explain. In any case, the north would always be the north. It is a remote area from the perspective of the royal capital. Cordelia bit her lips at Jude's words, as it was true since she knew it from having been born in the north. Put yourself in the shoes of the royal capital and the royal family, and think about it. Wouldn't it look bad if they accepted and used items that were popular in a remote area? You mean they don't want to accept the fashion trends of the remote areas? To be frank, yes, it also includes the fashion trends of those below them. I feel upset. But you understand, right? I'm feeling upset because I understand. She thought that she knew what he roughly meant. She had to endure it for now in order to make the shampoo and conditioner fashionable in the royal capital. What would happen after we've made it popular in the royal capital? We'll spread it all across the country and make sure we get our share of the profit. That way my princess can buy a lot of delicious and pretty things. Ahem. Cordelia cleared her throat and pretended that it was not true, but he could see it in her eyes. She seemed to be very pleased. Well, anyway, an invitation will arrive from the royal family soon, so we just need to go to the royal capital. Cordelia used to go to the royal capital with Count Chase every year at the founding ceremony, even if her fiancé, Jude, was sick. Because it was a precious opportunity to meet Adelia, who was working in the royal capital. Would they allow us if we said that we'll be leaving first? We can use the name of the Guardians of the Holy Cross to make it possible. It was for this reason on why I met with them at that time. Jude and Cordelia didn't have any intentions in going to the royal capital quietly. They had to do some power-ups by doing all the quests that were available on the way from Balon to the royal capital. We must specifically stop by the Temple of Life and the dungeon of Archwizard Archiman. Each was a place where things needed to power up Jude and Cordelia were present. We need to find clues so that we could meet Fran. Jude immediately nodded at Cordelia's words. Lena didn't have much information about the location of the other two of the 5 heroes. Druid Fran and Necromancer Velkian. I wonder how Lena's doing. I'm sure she's fine, perhaps she met my master by now. Lena left for the southern part of the Len Kingdom in order to meet Landius. Cordelia took out the feather Lena had given her. It was a token of Lena's friendship, but she also got it to reassure Fran and Velkian when they meet the two. We'll do quests on the way and find traces of Fran and Velkian if possible. We'll get to the royal capital first and do some undercover work. We'll be very busy. Okay, if my Jude thinks so, this Cordelia will follow you. Got it? Yes, madam, I shall do my best to take care of it. Jude exaggeratedly bowed as if he was acting in a play, and then he extended his hand to her. Would you like to go now that our conversation is over? Yes, Mr. Bayer. Cordelia deliberately answered in a modest manner as she took Jude's hand and stood up. They headed to Count Bayer's office. They were going to get permission to leave for the royal capital first. A few days later, in a completely different place. Saluzia, a high-ranking demonic human of the Devil's Hand, had a faint smile. They're finally back. Jude Bayer and Cordelia Chase. The two who fled across the border to the land of the barbarians had returned to the north. Are we attacking them this time? Saluzia slowly nodded at the question of Carnos, her subordinate. We'll target the two as they head for the royal capital. The two were accompanied by Count Chase when they returned to Balon, so they couldn't even touch the two, but if the two went on a trip alone again, the situation would change. Foolish ones. Did you think that the Devil's Hand would easily give up? Or did you think that you were completely free from the past after having been to a distant place? It doesn't matter either way. I just have to capture the two foolish, yet unrivaled and sweet offerings. What should we do? Are you going to do it yourself again? No, we might make the Guardians of the Holy Cross move. Just send 3 mid-ranking demonic humans. Jude and Cordelia had a power equivalent to a low-ranking demonic human. They were that much strong when she last met them, so they couldn't have become much stronger than that in just a month. The 3 mid-ranking demonic humans was definitely something excessive, but she was determined to not fail again. I shall follow your orders. Carnos bowed and left the room, and Saluzia, who was now alone, opened the demon record. It was to contemplate on which demon would she summon with Cordelia as the sacrifice. It's an exaggerated story anyway. She had heard that Jude and Cordelia played an active part in the events across the border. Saluzia knew that the Devil's Eye who occupied the barbarian lands had greatly failed, but she did not know the exact details. They must have made a significant contribution. But it was clear to her on what the two people with only the strength of a low-ranking demonic human could do. Count Chase and Count H.R. Svelga must have done the really important stuff. I'll make you regret it. That they didn't let themselves be caught quickly, that they weren't sacrificed immediately. A small smile spread over Saluzia's face. It wasn't because she found the perfect demon to summon that would use Cordelia as a sacrifice. She was thinking of the trust of their leader whom she would recover once she caught the two. Her position would be firmly established again. I hope that day comes soon. The day when Jude and Cordelia would go on a trip to the royal capital. Saluzia's smile deepened, and she turned her gaze to the demon record. She moved her long and thin fingers as she flipped the pages of the demon record. An invitation to the founding anniversary of the kingdom. The founding anniversary itself was naturally a big event, but it was also a relatively common event that happened every year. Therefore, a lot of countryside nobles didn't attend it, and the royal family did not encourage the countryside nobles from attending too. But it was different this time. Because it was the celebration of the 300th founding anniversary. People had interestingly attached meanings to numbers that were perfectly matched. Like 10, 20, or 30. But this time it was 300. It was just 299 becoming 300 when viewed objectively, but its significance was bound to be different. It's amazing that the kingdom has been around for 300 years. It wasn't just a small country in some remote area, as it was one of the two strongest powers in the continent, a major power that had stood for 300 years. So it was a seriously outstanding accomplishment. Nobles from all over the country will gather. The royal family even issued invitations to low-ranking nobles in the countryside. It was literally unreasonable for Count Bayer and Count Chase, who both belonged to the 12 northern families, to pull out of such an event. Gar El Jude and I will go to the royal capital, so I'll leave the territory to Sir Victor. No one opposed Count Bayer's declaration. While it was normal for either Count Bayer or Gar El to remain in order to manage the territory, the founding anniversary made the situation different. Even in the Chase family, Count Chase and his successor Edward, as well as his youngest daughter Cordelia, would be going to the royal capital too. It's quite different from the original. Around 4.5 months after the beginning of the Cordelia route. In the original, Jude was still suffering from his illness, while Cordelia was missing, so neither of the two counts went to the royal capital with a joyful heart. Only Edward headed to the royal capital as the Chase family representative. Even in the Bayer family, it was Gar El who headed for the royal capital, because their intelligence network had reported that there were unusual movements in the barbarian lands. Because Hurricane had almost taken over the western side of the wild lands at that time. But everything changed, so the two count families decided to go to the royal capital as if they were going sightseeing. Are you saying that the two of you would be going first alone? Yes, father. The original plan was for the Bayer and Chase families to pack up and set off for the royal capital together. But the trip to the royal capital was long, and the preparation itself took quite some time, since they also had to prepare gifts to exchange with the nobles in the royal capital. We have some things to discuss with the guardians of the Holy Cross regarding the wild lands. Most importantly, I have to meet my master too. Iron Man Landius. Count Bayer was forced to step back when that name was mentioned. The tremendously talented Jude had inherited the martial arts of a foreigner instead of the swordsmanship of Count Bayer, so it would have been normal for Count Bayer to be angry, but the mentioned foreigner was that Landius. Iron Man Landius was always mentioned in discussions about the continent's strongest people, and Jude would soon inherit the martial arts of an ancient person who had defeated the overlords of hell in the past, so Count Bayer was fine with Jude learning from Landius. I understand why you have to go first, but as for going with Lady Cordelia, Count Bayer's words trailed off in the end, and Jude glanced at Cordelia, who was standing next to him. She had a slightly resentful look before she blushed and said, "That aye, Mr. Bayer, I love him so much." "So do I want to be with her all the time." Cordelia fidgeted and stuttered, while Jude openly spoke and flirted. A smile then spread over Count Bayer's face. "Ahem, well, since you said that, I guess I'll allow it." "What a cute couple." Count Bayer warmly looked at the two, and Jude turned to Cordelia as he had a happy expression too. On the other hand, Cordelia awkwardly smiled and looked at Jude. "Hey, is this really the only way?" "It is, I mean it's effective." "You. Why is it always me who says the embarrassing words? And why is Jude fine and I'm the only one who's embarrassed? And why is the shame always mine? Anyway, let's finish this. Smile quickly." When Jude said that with his eyes, Cordelia reflexively smiled, and Count Bayer spoke afterwards. "I'll allow it if Count Chase gives his permission, but I have one condition." "Condition?" "Yes, regularly report your activities and contact us. Traveling like you've did before is not permissible. Do you understand?" "Yes, father. Yes, father." Their discussion ended at that. Jude and Cordelia obediently answered, and Count Bayer smiled again. He told them to talk to him again after they had obtained Count Chase's permission. And a few days later, during the time when Saluzia heard the news that Jude and Cordelia were heading to the royal capital, it went smoothly. Inside a two-horse carriage driven by a coachman, Jude looked out of the window with a peaceful expression. Just like Count Bayer, Count Chase had also allowed the two to travel. He also generously took care of our travel expenses. As expected of my future father-in-law. I really love you. It's going really smoothly now. Being allowed to go first was nice, but the most important part was being allowed to go on a trip with just the two of them. Because it would be difficult to do the quests if someone else is with us. They wouldn't be directly heading to the royal capital, as they would be stopping here and there while on the way, so it would inevitably be difficult for them if someone else joined them. We'll have to explain why we have to go somewhere else while on the way, and why we know of such a place. But fortunately, the two were allowed to travel alone, and Count Chase greatly helped them too. HMPH, I don't like that you still look weak and frail, but it would be okay if it's the two of you. I'll allow it. Count Chase said that with his usual serious and stern face, and even brought him a gift like always. Thank for helping me always, father. Jude mentally thanked him, as he continued to look out of the window with a smile. The world looked so beautiful to him, now that his worries were resolved. And across from him, Cordelia crouched her body and was troubled as her lips quivered. Yuzu. She was like that because her conversation with Dahlia, the night before their departure, had continued to bother her. She squinted her eyes and then closed it, and Cordelia recalled yesterday's conversation. Miss, please remember what I'm saying. You're not married yet, so you should never cross the line. Do you understand? What are you talking about? What do you mean by crossing the line? There's nothing like that, okay? It was just the delusions of her older sister Dahlia. When Cordelia had unknowingly opposed it strongly, Dahlia narrowed her eyes and said as she touched her chin. Good, however, you two can kiss instead. Just kiss but don't cross the line, do you understand? He won't. Jude is a gentleman, okay? He is a gentleman, but he's a man too, right? He's also a wolf, okay? Wolf. When the protesting Cordelia became curious, Dahlia quickly nodded and said as she drew her face closer. My lady, I find you very pretty, cute and lovely, even if I'm a woman too. Are you angry? Not really. Anyway, how would you look like in Mr. Bayer's eyes? Wouldn't he see you as a real angel? She was a real angel in the first place. Because of ancestral regression. Mr. Bayer must be holding back a lot too, so I'll tolerate kissing. If it's that much, you're 17 years old now and can do it. What are you talking about? What do you mean by tolerate? Are you saying that Jude wants to kiss me? Wouldn't he? He'll seriously want to, right? That's ridiculous. No, it's not ridiculous. It's something that's reasonable. Mr. Bayer is also a man. He's a human. he's not a stone statue but a person made of flesh and blood. A human. Cordelia stepped back at Dahlia's fiery speech. But instead of protesting, she quivered her lips from worry again. Because Dahlia's words somehow made sense. Really, Jude is like that with me. He is, absolutely, somehow. As Dahlia emphasized that with clenched fists, Cordelia also clenched her fists without realizing it, and soon quivered her lips again. Anyway, just kissing is fine. You understand that you can't cross the line, okay? That was her conversation with Dahlia last night. After she finished recalling it, Cordelia thought as she covered her face with both hands in order to calm herself, whose cheeks had turned red. It's ridiculous. A delusion. Cordelia forced herself to smile as she lowered her hands and peeked at Jude. What is so good outside that he's looking out the window with a happy face, but now that I see it, he has such well-shaped lips. Cordelia. The color is pretty, it seems to be soft. Cordelia. But it's still lips, so it's similar to mine, right? Cordelia. Why are his lips so close? Cordelia. Kaya. It was right in front of her. Cordelia was startled by Jude's face that was within the reach of her breath, so she threw herself in the corner of the chair while Jude tilted his head and frowned. What's wrong? There's nothing wrong, okay? I didn't think about that, okay? I was just looking there, okay? Jude narrowed his eyebrows again at Cordelia's strong reaction. Think about what? What's the there you're talking about? It's nothing, anyway, what is it? Do you have a fever? Shall I take your temperature? Jude drew near her again to touch her forehead, but Cordelia shook her limbs in a fluster and said, I am fine, I can use recovery. Really? Yes, really, so it's fine, I'm not sick at all. Recovery is the best. By the way, Cordelia. Yes. Why can't you look into my eyes? You're wrong, okay? I'm just closing my eyes because I'm tired, okay? It's not because I can't look at you, okay? Cordelia forcefully closed her eyes to not see him, as she was quite in a panic. She didn't know what thoughts would come out of her mind if she looked into his eyes now. Cordelia snorted with her eyes closed, and Jude narrowed his eyes but soon decided to change the topic. She'll get angry if I say that she's cute here. That will make her cuter, though. But instead of tormenting Cordelia further, Jude sat back in his seat and said to her, Moving on, let's talk about our schedule. Schedule, you already told me about that. I did, I said that we'll be heading to the Temple of Life as our primary destination. The place which Jude and Cordelia set as their primary destination was the Temple of the Goddess of Life, Aerith. Unlike the Solari denomination that still maintained its legacy, the Aerith denomination had completely disappeared, so there was no one who knew about the location of their temple now. Except for us. In the game, the temple was hidden deep in the mountains, just like the temple of Solari where Lysagang was sealed, so it was a place where they knew the location only after going through a special event. But there's Jude Wiki. It was a bit embarrassing to say Jude Wiki out of her own mouth, but Cordelia couldn't help it since she had called it Jude Wiki for a long time. We'll head to the Temple of Life to secure the Sphere of Life. I need an enormous amount of life energy to open a new door of Ninth Heaven's 9 doors. I'll be able to easily open the 5th door if I use the Sphere of Life. I can also raise my angel rank there, right? That's right, you'll be able to raise your angel rank if you absorb the remaining divine power in the temple. If you're lucky, you might even get a divine blessing. Just as the invasion of the northern barbarians in the game had ended in the defeat of the Len Kingdom, the events in the royal capital also ended with the defeat of the Len Kingdom. A catastrophe occurred when the royal family was massacred, and more than half of the royal palace collapsed. As you know, the levels of the enemies are higher in the royal capital. Even if we passed through all of them, there's still the Minister of Defense, Duke Antarius. He was a distinguished swordsman who was one of the 10 great swordmasters whom the Len Kingdom was proud of. Moreover, he was also a war hero who had made great contributions in the war against the Argon Empire. We have to be as strong as possible. It was impossible to fight against the Minister of Defense in the game. Death only awaited them when they tried to fight him. The Minister of Defense, are you planning on bringing the first sword to our side to deal with him?
That's the first plan.
A man who was called the First Sword because he was ranked first among the swordmasters. Also known as the Sword Saint of Light, he was not in the royal capital during the day of the founding anniversary.
But we can change history.
In the same way that they saved the leader of the Eastern forces, Red Gale, who was fated to die. Anyway, it's us who will become the main actors in the end, so we have to become strong first.
Yes, let's become stronger,
Cordelia said as she clenched her fist, and Jude unconsciously smiled before he spoke about their issue at hand.
Anyway, it's time for them to appear.
Are you talking about the Devil's Hand?
Oh, you know about it.
HMPH, do you think I'm stupid? Of course I know,
Cordelia said as she shrugged before crossing her arms.
Saluzia personally appeared last time. They probably waited for us to return from the north.
Why had they not attacked us so far?
Because your father was with us on our way home, and we were both at home for quite some time. Attacking them during Emma Ficus' birthday was also impossible. To begin with, it only took 1 day to travel to the Ficus territory. But we're now on a long journey to the royal capital. In addition, there's only the two of us who have gone on this trip.
It's the perfect time to attack us.
If Count Bayer and Count Chase had known how obsessed the Devil's Hand was with Jude and Cordelia, they would have never allowed the two to travel alone.
Anyway, do you have any plans about this matter?
Plans? Don't feign ignorance. You're not the kind of person who will stay still when you're expecting an attack.
You're right, you know me very well.
Because I see you all the time.
Yes, you've seen me all the time,
Jude said as he nodded his head before he beckoned to Cordelia.
Come closer to me first.
Are you going to whisper to me again?
Well, it's an important topic.
No one is listening anyway, we're always doing this. Cordelia grumbled but eventually moved to the side of Jude quietly and pricked up her ears, and Jude drew his face closer to Cordelia's ear.
Wait a second.
Why?
No, okay.
Cordelia took a deep breath to calm herself as she closed her eyes for some reason, and Jude tilted his head but drew his face closer to her again. And he began to tell her of his plot like always.
What do you think? Do you like it?
Yes, I like it. A bright smile spread over Cordelia's face. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story.
Hello.